condition, and suppose a heavy rain was there, 3 day study was halted. So that part is considered as a deviation of study. Instead of hiding the fact that the 3 day work was not done because the because of heavy rain, this has to be noted in that study performance and study protocol, and that will be considered as a deviation from the study, and that deviation is permitted. But deviation, there is a limit for deviation. You can you have 10 to 20% deviation maximum in that study, but you cannot have all that whatever you have written or whatever protocol you have set up and whatever you have carried out the other part of that study. So that part is not permitted. And the records, the primary records, the archive records, secondary record, all has to be maintained. So this is the major component. Now I am coming into the process development part because of as a engineering point of view, our major objective is basically the machine's performance, the selection of reactor, selection of design of reactor. So as you know that when a student start this work, so he start with the batch reactors. A batch reactor, you know, every laboratory. Hello. So a laboratory, the student start working from the batch scale or RV flask, and the advantage of this is that this can be multivariate operation. The same flask he is carrying out the one reaction at one time and another reaction at the different time or next day. So this is the advantage. But at the same time, the quality consistency is the major challenge, because the isolation step, each step you require a isolation. The batch to batch consistency maintenance is very difficult. That's why you will find that when the process which carried out at the batch processes, you will find that every batch, the batch to batch consistency varies. At the same time, for the continuous operations, like you might have seen this refineries, petroleum refineries, and extraction columns, number of extraction columns which are continuous columns. So what they have, they have the one process, set the one process, optimize or standardize one process. So this is the steady state operations that we are producing 5 liter per hour. Suppose we are producing 5 liter per hour of product, and 10 liter per hour is raw material we were giving. So you cannot upgrade it into suddenly to 20 liter per hour. So the batch to batch consistency can be avoided in continuous reactor. Continuous reactor, a process is set, process flow diagram is set, material and energy balance, how much will be the energy consumption, what will be the mass balance. So that parameter to be taken into account, and you cannot change the much in the parameter once it has been set. But the advantage is that once you have set the continuous systems, you need not to do much work like in each batch step you have to do. So in continuous steps, what we find is that the continuous filtration, continuous rotary drying, that things is set at a certain conditions, and the product from one process is coming to the second process, and the integration of processes is giving you the few purification, lesser purification step and high purity. And when we go through the material balance, the material which is flowing into the reactor, so the accumulated material is equal to the flow in minus flow out, plus how much is reactant is consumed, how much reactant is consumed in the reaction, how much is lost or how much is left after the reaction, and that is considered as the rate of disappearance of the reaction. So this is the basic principles by the material balance of the or mass balance of the any process is carried out in the continuous reactor. Now come to the batch reactor. So this is the, so consider this is a typical RV flask. So consider this is a typical RV flask where the material is instantaneously charged. So this is a steady state process where you are giving the mixing of the compound, and composition changing with the time. Composition is changing with the time, but at the same time, whatever the reactant is left, till that will not be consumed, the reaction will not stop. If the given to the conditions. So particularly the autocatalytic reaction or exothermic reaction where the control is difficult, this batch reactor is sometimes give you the disastrous situations also. So because of that, but the time for conjunction of reaction that can be calculated in terms of the initial concentration is known to you. So final concentration, by calculating the final concentration left, you can find out what is the complete conversion taken place in the reaction system or not. And if you see the rate versus concentration curve, the area under the curve will give you that idea of what is the time for completion of the reaction. So if you know the final conversion, and if you know the time, you can find out what will be the size of volume of the reactor also. So this is the advantage. What basically we in our multi-model design, what we do is basically in the batch reactor, if it is available, so area under the curve is calculated, and that will give you how much volume to volumetric feed ratio we can utilize for batch reactor size identification. Mixed flow reactor is also called CSTR because it is a continuously stirred tank reactor. Here the continuous supply of number of feeds takes place, where the continuous supply control valve is provided that at certain rate of flow rate the feed is processed, and the uniform composition is maintained or a uniform diffusion is maintained through continuously stirring in the reactor. The advantage of this is that reactant, suppose if reactant A and B is there, and B we have supplied at higher rate, or A is supplied at higher rates, controlling the flow rate of one reactant, we can control the reactions. The other advantage is that the volume to feed ratio can also be calculated once the final conversion is known. So that is also help you to identify that what will be the size of this reactor. So the purpose of this telling this reactor profile of this thing is so that you can identify that what will be the size of the reactor. So suppose you are planning a 10 kg steel reactor. So our job is what will be the size of the reactor that we can calculate by this area under the curve. So here the one of a rate versus conversion or rate versus concentration when we plot. So if you see the comparison between the batch reactor and continuous reactor, the whole area and this whole area under the curve, this is give you the size of or volume of the mixed flow reactor. Whereas in the previous slide, if you see, only this area under the curve was giving you the size of batch reactor. So that's why the batch reactor size is always smaller compared to the continuous size reactor. And this is the tubular reactor. So sometimes when the mixed flow reactor, we have the space constants, we have other constants also, that like the heat exchangers. If you have seen it, that this is even though no reaction takes place in heat exchanger, their purpose is to get the heat transfer. But you see that number of tubular reactor are taken place. So this is the tube type of reactor, which is the catalyst or the bed is charged, and feed is passes through this reactor, and the product is developed, and the developed product at the end. The residence time for this reactor development or residence time is high. So here the conversion is compared to mixed reactor is little bit larger. And sometimes the space constraints is there, you cannot afford the long reactor also. So multiple reactor in series will give you the same effect. Multiple small reactor in series will give you the same effect as we are giving in the tubular reactor. And tubular reactor, all molecules, this is assumed that all molecules travels at the same velocity and no radial diffusion along the. So residence time is same. It is chances for intermixing are less. So it is chances that the conversion will be. So some rules of selection criteria for that is that reactor, when we are considering continuous reactor, the size will be larger, and density variation and products are of different density. So there will be difference in design. And the positive order, the kinetic is known that it is a positive reaction. The rate concentration curve will be rise, and in that situation, residence time will also affect it. So I am not going in much detail on that because that is little bit mathematical part. But the purpose is to tell only here that these are the criteria through which we select the reactor. So plug flow reactor, like the tubular reactor, this plug flow reactor is also called tubular reactor. This is considered more efficient in compared to our mixed flow reactors. I give you one example how this the same material, same process, how the contacting pattern, how this arrangement of reaction affect the product. Suppose a series reaction is A R to making S, and this reaction is taking photocatalytic reaction. Suppose that situation, suppose this is a tubular reactor, this is a mixed system, a gas system you have taken, and a UV lamp is passed, UV rays is throughout this volume. So you see, injection of A will be exponential decay, and at the same time, the intermediate component R will die, and once R consumption will take place or R production will take place, after that S production will start only. So it is a series reactions. So maximum concentration of R is right here. At the same time, the same reactor, what I did is that when the reactor passed through a UV system arrangement, I pass through a UV system arrangement where a small inlet passes through UV system. But that complete conversion through this reaction will take place, so the volume of the reactant is less, and the illumination of photo UV lamp is getting at the larger volume. So in that situation, the chances of conversion will be high, and this material is recycled back in this. So it is better chances, or it is more chances that A to convert A is exponentially decay, but R will be intermittently converted to S. So there are more chances that S conversion will be high. So the same material, same series reaction, same reactant we have applied, but we find two different products. And this is the best used in your bactericidal reactions. You all have seen this sewage treatment plant, the UV treatment system is you all I hope you all have seen in real life. So what you have seen is that outlet product is passed through UV lamp. Not all the collected water is not passed through the UV light is not passed collectively on a tank. Instead of that the product is passed through a UV lamp before discharging. So the purpose is same, so that the conversion, it is assumed that conversion is higher in this system compared to your intermediate formations. So this is the one example which we have given, and what accomplishment or what we are doing in our R&D program for, by which we are following this GLP compliances. This I am going to give the what we are doing in CDRI in particular. Like this is the captive cultivation of Cassia occidentalis plant which we have carried out. So this all the Cassia occidentalis plant was carried cultivation to pre-harvesting, all the conditions at the pre-measured condition we have carried out. All the crop growth monitoring with the temperature and humidity was monitored. After that, the material which is selected was gone through the solvent extraction route and submitted for the preclinical studies. The SOPs were prepared, and the advantage of this is what we did is everything is as per the SOP protocol. So what we did is the feasibility of every product, pure. This is the material which is basically a wild growth plant available in the humid conditions, and most of our plain conditions is available. So this material is agri product from farm to lab is explored. So we have produced around 250 kg of dry material in one lot. After that, all the harvesting, the controlled drying, and this process was carried out, and we developed the process flow diagram, which I am coming in the next slide, and mass material balance, how this was carried out, so that front end engineering design package for the industry, how it will be helpful for them. So that we have carried out, and finally its product has been licensed to Pharmenga Pharmaceutical Gujarat, which had using this as a glucocorticoid induced osteoporosis drugs, and this product is already also available in the market. This is the rotavapor, 20 liter capacity rotavapor. I hope you all might have seen this thing, this rotavapor, and all natural product chemists are using this rotavapor for the solvent recovery. So what we did is, this is a process flow diagram. What we did is, this is a solvent extraction process, solvent extractor percolator column, where the solvent is charged and the dried material, pre-harvested material passing through the crusher, and after screening, the oversized material was recycled back, whereas the final material of desired size of 3 micron, that is ending, this is filled with the percolator with the solvent, and the this solvent-rich material is sent to our rotavapor in filling tank. So this rotavapor, due to slight vacuum conditions, the solvent is recovered back, and all the extract-rich material is collected, and the recovered solvent is mixed with the spike solvent and again recirculate back into solvent percolator. So by that process and individual mass and material balance of each and individual steps we have carried out, and and we have data of all the each and individual process with the controlled SOP which has been followed. So when we supplied, this is the flow sheet which we have supplied to the industry. So industry, it was helpful. This was helpful to take the decision in terms of their energy consumption in the crusher, energy consumption to maintain the percolation conditions, solvent recovery conditions. So by that flow diagram, that front end engineering development package, this helped to industry to rapid or speed up their decisions how to commercialize this natural plant into market. So this is the compliances and each and individual's calibration we have also carried out. So calibration of the component, what are the conditions we are maintaining. By that process we have maintained by this material and energy balances. Similarly, we have a 10 liter capacity fermenter which has the in situ sterilization facility and data recording facility. And by the autoclaving, this has the in situ autoclaving and pH and dissolved oxygen concentration monitoring. So dynamic monitoring of every 30 seconds or every 20 seconds was taken, and Leishmania culture we have grown at this the 10 liter scale. And this the actin protein which is produced on the gram scale can be utilized for the vaccine development, which is already also under the development process for the development of the vaccine part. Similarly, we had the sanpiperidine, which is the local anesthetic drug, which was developed. The chemistry division has formulated or synthesized the molecule which is used as a local anesthetic compound. So with the help of NRDC, which are the government of India body, help to design and development of process. So it was contacted through NRDC, and the flow sheet, environmental losses to parameter, process integration step. Process integration is basically how the energy recovery, because one steam, suppose a steam passes through heat exchanger. So one steam which is out from the exchanger can be utilized to preheat the material. So that type of integration was also proposed to them, and by that process it was helpful to commercialize this material into final product stages. And then come to this animal laboratory animal facilities. So animal facilities, the facilities management, environmental health and safety compliances point of view, we have prepared or we have developed the SOPs as per the UP Pollution Control Board guideline and American Public Health Association guidelines. Then what are the biomedical waste disposal guidelines? What are the, and it's a training to the lower staff, because what we know and our lower staff which has to perform this activity is following it or not. That is also very important. And also time to time the inspection by agency is done. And by that agency's inspection, we have find it, if any shortcoming or anything they have indicated, we have the course corrective action by as per the NGCMA team has been suggested, we have also taken. And so far we have conducted 21 GLP studies, and this all are, or mostly of them are sponsored studies. So this is helping us to development of revenue, but also the national prestige also, because all the data which has been developed here are useful to directly be used by OECD developed countries. So if 140 countries can utilize this data by the contract research agreement, whatever, if they want to further development or further go for that processes. And then come to the centralized facility. The purpose of the centralized facility is so that the batch to batch consistency we can maintain. We can maintain the moisture free, we can supply the moisture free air, we can. Yes, excuse me. Anything? Hello? So like, so in the centralized facilities, we have compressor. So all the compressor are supplying this centralized compressed air into all the laboratory workbench. And in the workbench, what is happening before going into this, like this is the rainy season, there are chances of moisture is there. So a centralized dryer is put there. So before entering into or before going to workbench, like this is the workbench for the student, where directly compressed air is available. This saves a lot of time to the students and their efforts, because what happens is whatever the moisture, whatever the air is coming, moisture free, quality assured air, and also that this is the cheap also, because batch to batch process comparison, this is the centralized facility by which we can get the moisture free air and ensure that all the data or all the process is monitored completely. Similarly, LPG, we are giving the cylinder cooling system. So at what pressure we are supplying, we have centralized vacuum arrangement. In this vacuum arrangement, all the labs like this, the workbench student is getting the vacuum or scientist is getting vacuum, and all the solvent which is trapped out is collected in this vacuum point. So this decentralized facility help that we are giving the consistent data, moisture free or quality as moisture free air or quality consistent operating parameter range, so that the chances or minimization of the purpose of minimization of error. Similarly, we are getting the pharmaceutical grade water, because initially the batch to batch, every lab there is requirement of distilled water, and if they have the glass setups, and what is the pH they are getting, what is the a person is dedicated especially to make the distilled water and this thing. So but what we are getting the ASTM pharmaceutical ASTM grade water, and the quality is assured because the online analyzer is there. If any of the thing varies or any of the quality varies, the machine will get auto shut mode, so the water supply will stop in that mode. So the purpose is so that the minimization of time or speed up of our processes. So these compliances, all these compliances are done through all these compliances are done to the purpose of the for in terms of statutory compliances, also the safety protocol to reduce the risk of the risk, and also in terms of the quality assurity. This is the liquid. This is our nitrogen generator plant which we are having in our CDRI, and what we are getting is this situation is happening. I tell you how this concept comes in our laboratories or how we started this. Like in every lab, you might have seen that there is air is there, air supply you get through the cylinders, nitrogen supply you get the cylinder. So in the nitrogen cylinder, a person filled air and given it to a student. So suddenly he carried out one reaction and fire took place. So from that onwards, we learn a lesson that we cannot essentially trust on a certain thing, because when the vendor was called, he said, "Sir, it is a human error. We have given to our local person. He couldn't identify." So what we after that we thought of in that process and we had it is a pressure swing adsorption based technology. We had the air is where input air is taken from the compressed air, and carbon molecular sheets are filled in this tank, and there is a cycle time of 45 seconds, and after that there is a particular adsorption and desorption takes place, and by that process we have for the quality checkup we put a oxygen concentration analyzer. So if the oxygen concentration in product goes to above 100 ppm, the plant goes trip. So by that one we assured that we get the 99.999% purity of the nitrogen. So by the centralized management we are and if we are putting it through cylinder, so there is a chances we cannot identify that the nitrogen how much purity nitrogen was there, and in that situation the result vary by other countries, or OECD is using our result at the other stages. In that situation we cannot claim that our consistency or reproducibility is correct or not. So but in this situation we have the quality consistency, we know that what is the input we have given and what is the expected outcome, and if there is any deviation, why this deviation may be taking place. And also the cost is also reduced, because the capital cost is a little bit high, this we agree, but at the same time the recurring cost or the operating cost is very low. So industries or the universities or the academic institutions, they are always must encourage to industrial visit to the student. The purpose is that they should have this type of setup, because this will help them to reducing the recurring cost, but at the same time that they will get the consistency in data, and the quality of research data will also improve it by that way. Similarly, but that is not limited to laboratories only. We have run the standalone unit for the liquid nitrogen, because liquid nitrogen, liquefaction is done through the cryogenic engine, and a small amount of moisture present in this liquid that will lead to blocking of cryogenator. So we need a high quality of air purification. We have a Stirling Lake liquid nitrogen plant. So this we have also operated in house by that the same mechanism, and producing around 3,500 liters of liquid nitrogen here. And for the management of waste, we have the effluent treatment plant. So all the waste out from the laboratory go through the clarifier and go for the pH adjustment. After that, this treated water is segregated and used in horticulture work. Similarly, we have the sewage treatment plant. So all the water coming from the colony area and all this process, you can see this is the processes. So when it passes through different processes, this water is discharged. All the discharge water is recycled and used in horticulture work. So it is a zero discharge campus. Ideally, this is very difficult to follow, but we are following the zero discharge now, because when we get the statutory compliances or in terms of GLP compliances, it is always required what you will do with the water, what you will do, what is the source of electricity, what will be the consumption of natural resources, what will be you will do, how much contamination or how much air pollution you will do. And what mechanism we did for the solvent, we segregated all the laboratory solvent, segregated into chlorinated and non-chlorinated solvent. And this solvent is given to the authorized recycler, who is after recycling selling off it this into a leather industries. So this solvent is also recycled or reutilized. All the water is recycled into horticulture work, and our statutory compliances in terms of pollution control board's consent is also fulfilled. The waste disposal point of view of the waste disposal, the biomedical waste or hazardous waste, there is a guideline biomedical waste rule from the Central Pollution Control Board. So we have followed this categorization. All the yellow containers or yellow color bag was used for the collection of human anatomical waste, all the soiled waste and all these things, and they passes through the incinerator. And all the plastic materials or the recyclable or reusable material which is contained in the red containers and passes through autoclave, and then it is sold to a recycler, which is recycled back into recycled back into process industries. And this white color of containers were used for all the shafts, all the materials, or all the metal parts, which was so that it could be visible to all. And this is also sold to a recycler, and the glassware is also used as a recycle. So all the essentially yellow and red container bags. This is pass through. We have an incinerator, in-house incinerator. Leaving this part. This is the incinerator. So we have an in-house incinerator. So all the yellow color and red color incinerator, they are as per their disposal, as per biomedical waste disposal we do. And this is also the compliances through in-house operations and pollution. And the time to time their record is maintained and submitted to GLP team or GLP facility manager. And when they come, they see whether the compliance has been fulfilled or not. And after that, this report is submitted to Pollution Control Board also. So by that way, we are fulfilling the biomedical waste disposal, air quality monitoring, and also the waste disposal. Similarly, fire and safety compliances, we have the auto fire alarm system, signage system, public announcement systems. We have fire, this is the fire detection system, manual call point, extinguisher to nearby approachable points. This is the fire panel, which will give you the signage at where you have got the signal. And this clearly it's so much to the signage also. Signage is very even though very negligible part, neglected part, but it is also important in point of view, because where is the exact route in escape route, exit route or escape route in terms of emergency. So this is also the glowing signage board, because in power off or in case of dark situations, you can identify where you can escape. So this is very important in terms of fire and safety compliances. And also in the last I want to say that the trainings and the frequent discussion with the colleagues, with the other with the colleagues who are working in these areas, this is also very important, because this help you to improve or identify whether this is what are the scope for improvement. Like during the lockdown period, what we did is we were prepared for the WHO has opened WHO, MOOC, and these type of sites are available, which was giving the how to control the infection prevention and control, and what should be your preparedness. So this type of work, and this help to design the SOP and what are the modification in SOPs we can do in that situation. So that's why this helps us to identify that we should follow this route, we should follow what is the scope for improvement, what is the national any disastrous or any emergency situation is arises, we must have some ready preparedness and emergency plan B always. This is most important the aspect in GLP also. And centralized services help help for maintaining the batch consistency, and the monitoring time to time monitoring of GLP compliant facilities, and the external agency to give their review, and any deviation from the study must also be bring in the notice to the party. So this is the upgradation or the future take home message, that more the training, more learning in that help you to identify or to improve for scope for improvement. So this is all I have to say. And this you can see all the, this is the real picture. This you can see all the greenery. This is maintained inside in my campus. It is using recycled water. So the quality of the water can directly identify. So this is all I have to say. Thank you very much for your patience hearing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any question?
If having any question with the participants, please interact with Engineer Ranveer Singh. If having any question, please.
And if even after they have any query, they can send me through email also. I have mentioned this my email in first slide, sir. A slide is also given to madam.
Okay, sir. So I thank Engineer Ranveer ji for a nice and appealing lecture, which was explained in the very lucid words and in very simple way. Actually, or in real, it is comprehensive lecture which is understood in the not by the theory on GLC, but also in the showing some graphs, diagrams, and the figures. So actually, in real, he is the professor, designer of and development of the environmental and health regarding researches. He also explained about the environmental safety and health through the clinical and preclinical tests, commercial production with efficacy and safety of the drugs was also discussed through the regulatory reforms using GLP, GMP compliance and the major compliance. He also given his view about the challenges for R&D, what is the challenging for the R&D centers, the quality regarding the quality management, the pilot plant commercial productions, QAP, and the study conductance test reforms, EH parameters. So the performance, all of the explained through the that is showing performance curve of the reactors, which is not only the classical but the photo reactors. He also explained about the operation and maintenance of the various types of the waste and the ETP and the STP. So we are very grateful to him for sparing the time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So now okay.
Unmuted.
Dr. Veer Mayank.
Thank you,
So I
Dr.
request
Shekhar, sir.
Disha Shiksena for further work.
I'm here, sir. Yeah.
So may I leave
Thank you,
now?
Dr. Shekhar. A brief summary of Dr. Engineer Ranveer Singh, sir. And I'm really glad to know what CDRI is doing nowadays. And now I would like to call Dr. Poonam for the further takeover. Dr. Poonam, please.
Okay, hello once again. Saying thank you and welcoming to all for presenting here and listening this wonder lecture presented by Dr. Engineer Ranveer Singh sir. Now I am going to do a warm welcome of Dr. Veer Mayank. He is a renowned and high proficient personality. He is a good researcher having significant value in social aspects. He is working as an assistant professor in the Department of Law in Sikkim University, Gangtok, and was previously head of the Department of Law in Sikkim University. He earned his PhD on Trade and Environmental Policy, a study of interface and conflict in the global nation context. He has also published several publications in national and international journals with high Scopus index. He also edited one book titled New Dimensions of Intellectual Property Rights. Dr. Veer Mayank has delivered a number of talks and various legal issues covering issues of intellectual property rights, traditional knowledge, international trade and financial laws, environmental laws on national and international platform. So now I can say that it's our pleasure that he is an invited speaker of this 5-day national webinar. He has also worked on project entitled Role of Information and Communication Technologies in Human Trafficking from Northeast India into Myanmar for Commercial Sexual Exploitation. Review of jurisdictional boundaries in law enforcement is sponsored by Asian Studies Center, Shillong. He has been a member of several bodies and committees of the university, including the Board of Studies, School Board, and IPR cell of university. Now, with the help of all these highlighted academic profile of Veer Mayank ji, I am very happy that you are an invited speaker of this workshop today. Now, once again, I am welcoming you, Dr. Veer Mayank from Sikkim University. Please. Hello.
Thank you, Dr. Poonam.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me, Dr. Poonam? Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Thank you, Dr. Poonam, for this wonderful introduction. I'll start with my presentation. I want to thank the organizers of Veer Kumar Singh University for giving me this opportunity on making a presentation on a skill development program on good laboratory practices. My topic that has been allotted to me is laws, standards, and rules to regulate safety in laboratory and industry. Essentially, what I will start with is that laboratories or industries are not much different from each other. You have got the same equipment, you have got the same material, you have got the same same processes, only the scales are different. With regard to industry, the issue that comes up is that the amount of solvent, suppose we have got a process which is continuing on in an industry, the amount of the solvent or the amount of resources that would be required in the industry for the purpose of the activity would be larger compared to what would be there in a laboratory. But on the other hand, in case of a laboratory, the number of processes that would be being carried down at a certain point of time would be far more diverse than what would be there in a particular industry, because the industry is specialized for a certain activity or a group of activities, while a laboratory is not that much specialized. It's more of a generic thing where we can carry out a large number of processes or a large number of activities. Though there are specializations, but still a laboratory is far more generic rather than compared to a specific industry. Before I move on to my discussion on safety regulations in industries or laboratory, we first have to understand what we understand by safety. Now, safety is something which is contextualized. Safety is something which means different things to different people. In a sense, let's say, if you're traveling on a road, then your safety is that you should not come to physical harm. But suppose we are talking in terms of safety of the country, the safety of the country could imply physical security, that is military security. It could imply economic security. It could imply climate security. Security means a lot of different things to different people. However, in this presentation, I would narrow down the aspect of security to the harm that may be caused by the release of environmental pollutants or environmental agents or agents that are normally not present in the environment, and the harm that it would lead to is essentially physical, though as an extension it could be economic also. Now, again, that's the first point. Before I move on to the strict explanation or the discussion on safety, I would like to set up a control, as you people do in your science experiments. I'll take the control of the control part as that of a kitchen, a domestic kitchen. Now, to some people, kitchen in itself is a laboratory, or an industry. Like to people who are chef, they could easily classify that domestic kitchen as an industry if it's being run on a commercial scale. Now, the first question that probably would come in everyone's mind while I'm picking up this routine kitchen in this presentation, there are a couple of things that I want to point out here. First of all, we are in a kitchen from a childhood, and we are dealing with all these substances that like sodium chloride, which is common salt, or boiling water, oil, open flame, which is from inflammable LP gas, maybe to some extent microwave ovens, electrical points. These are some of the things that are present in a laboratory also, or these are things that are present in industries also, though of course on a very large scale. But the setting of these things are different. Means you have got children running around in a kitchen, domestic kitchen. We do that all from childhood. We never even know what hazards are there. Second is that even when we are cooking up something, cooking up a dish, then too there are the kind of hazards that are there. We do take care of them. Like there could be microorganisms which need to be boiled so that they are dead. The spores have to be killed off. We advise children to wash their hands before they eat or touch anything in a similar fashion. So what I'm doing out here is setting up a control that, look, what you do out there in kitchen, the kind of regulations that you practice in your kitchen, the kind of a safety devices that you use up in kitchen, you have to keep it on one part of your mind, and then you have to look at what are the regulations that you are going to use in a laboratory, the actual laboratory where you wear white coats and you have got means real good scientists working on new experiments, or maybe an industry which is carrying out some, which is producing some new reagent, or which is producing some article on a very large scale. Now, let's see this control part. What are the safety regulations in a kitchen? I don't think that people are really worried about government regulations as domestic kitchens. But we all know we have got regulations. We have got regulations which are based on common sense, like we need to have a proper earth for electrical appliances. These are hidden from plain sight, but only a trained person could identify that whether a proper whether the electrical appliances has been earthed or not. On the other end, there are common sense that, like, you should not walk on a slippery floor, you should not run around in the kitchen, you should handle hot objects with some kind of an implement. But as far as having perfect regulations, safety regulations are concerned, I don't really think that people even know that there are regulations. Like there are certain building codes that have to be followed for when we are planning a kitchen. Now, as I stated earlier, to a chef, a kitchen is a workplace, a laboratory, or an industrial enterprise in some cases, which is obvious. For us, it's a domestic thing at a very small scale, but the same thing becomes an industrial enterprise when it goes to on a larger scale. Now, again, the hazards that may be there in a kitchen, like microorganisms are everywhere. But to a scientist who is working in a biosecurity level grade 4 laboratory, for them, the hazards that are there, or the microorganisms that are there in a kitchen, are very low key. Means they don't really worry about those organisms. They are dealing with something far more sinister, far more toxic, far more dangerous. But yet the organisms are there, and we are handling them on a daily basis without personal protective equipment, as is pretty common these days. And again, the people who would be served that dish could also be infected if proper hazard removal is not done. Now, how are regulations designed? I have set up a control out here. एक कंट्रोल बना दिया है किचन का, कि आप किचन में क्या कर रहे हो, आप किचन में कैसे रहते हो, आप किचन में करते क्या हो। अब आप एक सिंपल सा एग्जांपल ले लीजिए सोडियम क्लोराइड का, द कॉमन सॉल्ट। सोडियम क्लोराइड जब आप किचन में यूज कर रहे होते हो तो वो सोडियम क्लोराइड आपका कोई मतलब इट्स अ नॉर्मल, इट्स अ कॉमन रिएजेंट, इट्स एज वी कॉल इट इन अ लैबोरेटरी, बट इट्स अ कॉमन थिंग, वी ऑल नो, इवन अ किड वुड हैंडल सोडियम क्लोराइड वेरी इजीली। उसे कोई खास नुकसान होने नहीं जा रहा है। पर वही रिएजेंट जब लैबोरेटरी में पहुंच जाता है, एक केमिकल लैबोरेटरी में जहां पर प्रोबेबली सल्फर कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड हो सकता है, तो वो HCl गैस प्रोड्यूस करने की चांस रहता है ना। चीज सेम है, सोडियम क्लोराइड, सेटिंग डिफरेंट है। आपकी किचन की सेटिंग अलग है, आपके लैबोरेटरी की सेटिंग अलग है। लैबोरेटरी की सेटिंग इसलिए अलग है क्योंकि वहां पर H2SO4 है, और किचन की सेटिंग अलग है क्योंकि वहां पर H2SO4 नहीं है या और सारे रिएजेंट्स नहीं है। अब प्रॉब्लम ये आती है कि हम अब रेगुलेशन कैसे चेंज करेंगे। सामान तो वही है सोडियम क्लोराइड, लेकिन सेटिंग बदल चुकी है। अब चूंकि सेटिंग बदली हुई है तो चीजें भी बदल जाएंगी। नाउ अब आप अब आप इस चीज को ले लीजिए कि आपके घर में एक बहुत ही इंक्विजिटिव माइंड वाला लड़का है जो कहीं से, या कोई किड है जो कहीं से पायरोसल्फ्यूरिक एसिड या सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड उठा लाता है। नाउ इन दैट केस उसके पास सोडियम क्लोराइड भी है, उसके पास सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड भी है, और उसके पास टाइम भी है। इन दैट केस रेगुलेशंस ऑफ द किचन विल अंडरगो अ फर्दर चेंज, कि आप कोई भी ऐसा काम नहीं करोगे जो हार्मफुल हो सकता है। ये रेगुलेशन आप बना रहे हो। सेटिंग आपकी फिर बदल गई। अब आपके पास जो जो लोग हैं वहां पर काम करने वाले, वो अलग हो गए हैं। नाउ इसी तरह आप सेटिंग और बदल लीजिए कि आपके किचन में माइक्रोवेव रखा हुआ है, and there is some inquisitive mind who loves to open up all these appliances. इस केस में अगेन आपकी सेटिंग बदल जाएगी कि आप चीजों को कहीं और रखोगे, किसी ऐसी जगह पर रखोगे जहां पर वो खोला ना जा सके। पर वही माइक्रोवेव ओवन जब आपका लैबोरेटरी में पहुंच जाता है तो वहां पर इतने इस तरह के रेगुलेशंस होते हैं कि कोई भी ऐसा आदमी वहां एंटर नहीं कर सकता हु इज नॉट रियली क्वालिफाइड टू हैंडल दैट माइक्रोवेव, or to handle, or to come even close, or who has got no business to be there in that laboratory. जैसे ही वो अंदर आएगा, he or she would be asked, why are you here? Disciplinary action could be initiated, or even a police case could be filed. All those things can happen. So setting के हिसाब से regulations बदलते हैं, और इस चीज पे बदलते हैं कि आपके पास सामान कौन कौन सा, basically what exactly are the settings out there. तो हमारे regulations कभी भी इस तरह के नहीं हो सकते कि वो एक ही रेगुलेशन हर चीज पर, हर जगह पर यूनिफॉर्मली एक ही तरीके से अप्लाई हो रहा हो। रेगुलेशंस आर डिपेंडेंट अपॉन द सेटिंग in which the activity or the material is present. This is the basic point that I want to convey with this particular kitchen control part. Now, coming on to this, how are regulations designed? So essentially what I wanted to tell is that regulations are dependent upon some of the considerations: the setting where the activity is carried out, kitchen है, laboratory है, industry है, किस तरह की laboratory है, the people involved in carrying out the activity, highly trained scientists or illiterate individuals. LP gas means काफी लोग use करते हैं, LP gas laboratory में भी use होती है. My previous presenter, who is a highly accomplished engineer, just told you that there was an LP plant. LP gas measures भी यूज कर रहे हैं, गैस सेम है, टैंक सेम, द सिलेंडर सेम है, पर अब उसको हैंडल करने का तरीका, उसके चारों तरफ के रेगुलेशंस बदल चुके हैं क्योंकि सेटिंग बदली हुई है। इक्विपमेंट इन्वॉल्व और द मटेरियल इन्वॉल्व, किस तरह का मटेरियल है, सोडियम क्लोराइड है तो बहुत प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, साइनाइड है तो बहुत ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम है, कैसे उसको स्टोर करना है। अगर लेबोरेटरी सेटिंग में तो उसके रेगुलेशंस डिफरेंट होंगे, अगर एक ज्वेलर के पास है तो उसके रेगुलेशंस डिफरेंट हैं। वहां पर इतना ज्यादा इन्वॉल्व मीन्स you don't have qualified people holding degrees to handle all that. Extent of the risk or harm involved, same चीज है, but suppose you are sending a radioactive device to outer space or Antarctica, तो आप उतने regulations नहीं बनाओगे, but when you have got that same radioactive device in the heart of a highly populated city, so your regulations would be entirely different. So all these things determine what kind of regulations you are going to adopt, whether it be an industry, whether it be your home, whether it be a laboratory. Now, regulations, as I just explained, regulations regarding safety are dependent upon a combination of large number of factors. एक individual factor इसे affect नहीं करता है. These regulations will determine the permutations of various factors that are out there, will determine what kind of regulations are going to be there. The factors, the different level of factors. I've only detailed 4 factors up there, but there could be n number of factors. Now, it's not feasible to prescribe overarching regulations. Some could be prescribed like wearing goggles, but that too could be debated without a reference to the setting of the laboratory or the workplace. Now, from here I move on to what are the basics of safety in a laboratory or in industry. These are the fundamental kind of safety practices that we need to adopt in a laboratory or in industry. First is your use of safer technology equipment. These are common sense, so we do not need to really write down in some kind of a statute or some kind of a regulation. Routine checking of equipment for any defects. Safety precautions that should be in place like a fire hose, extinguisher, etc., and they should be easily accessible. Standard operating procedures should be prescribed. They should be available and visible at all times, and any departures, unless until that is authorized, has to be strictly dealt with. The design of the building should be according to the requirements, like clearly demarcated walkways, exit points, proper height of the building, etc. Proper training for using the material, which is quite obvious, and equipment and supervision monitoring by a trained supervisor at all times through inspection protocols, CCTV, etc. Access control, which is very important, like no one who is untrained or non-qualified should enter the laboratory premises. You have got all these finger biometric entry checks and control part. Emergency training to and employees, which is one of the most essential things. When you are working in a laboratory, there are chances, but emergency training is obviously required everywhere. Even in your kitchen, emergency training is required. If suppose the gas starts leaking out, the LP gas starts leaking out, so what you should do, you should immediately start opening up the windows and don't touch anything which is electrical in nature, or don't light a fire. Those kind of things are always trained. So emergency training is required everywhere. Last, trained staff and proper monitoring with proper records of handling and disposal of hazardous substances waste, which is again required. It's obvious. You cannot let these hazardous substances move out. Now, we have just discussed the requirement of setting, or the importance of a setting when we are dealing with regulations or the regulatory aspects of safety, or how we are going to ensure safety. Now, since the settings are changing, therefore the regulations will undergo a change. Now, we cannot expect one authority to be all knowledgeable as to be able to make all the regulations. So naturally, there will be different authorities, there will be different organizations, there will be different people who would be qualified in different areas, and they would be coming together, or they would be coming under one organization, and they will be coming with procedures to determine the safety. So now let's take a look at some of the organizations that do get into the safety aspect. Like we have got the Bureau of Indian Standards. Most of the time, the BIS prescribes regulations and standards for different substances, different material, different processes. We have got the DST, Department of Science and Technology, which prescribes different standards. We have got the different Department of Biotechnology, Atomic Energy Research Board, which deals with radioactive materials, UGC, ICMR. They deal with medical research. In my My previous presenter was discussing about some animal experiments that were being completed at these CISR laboratory and CDRI laboratory. Now, look at these things. And he also explained that they have to take care of the Environmental Protection Act. They have to take care of the guidelines of disposal of biomedical wastes, which is the BMW guidelines 2016. They are doing that in an environment which is drug related, that is pharmaceutical environment, which is dealing with a lot of chemicals also out there. So now what's actually happening is that while the pharmaceutical ingredients or the material, the pharmaceutical material or the chemicals are being controlled, or they are being regulated by a different set of agencies. Like if you have got a radioactive material, it's being regulated by the AERB, the Atomic Energy Research Board. On the other hand, the animal parts are being regulated by BMW regulations. So all these regulations are coming together, and then they are reporting it to the Pollution Control Board. The organization may not need to report the use of radioisotopes to the Pollution Control Board, but they would necessarily need to report the disposal of waste to the Pollution Control Board. So in any case, when you are working in a laboratory setting or even in industrial setting, there are different types of regulations, there are different types of organizations that come into play when determining what kind of regulations or what kind of safety or security regulations would be operative in that particular environment. So it's incredibly difficult to provide beforehand what kind of regulations would you have in a laboratory setting, what kind of regulations would you start with when you are setting up a laboratory. The regulations change with the kind of activity that you are performing in a laboratory. The basic regulations may be there, but the moment you move on to something different, the moment you start with some activity, the regulations start changing. Now, suppose you are using sodium chloride, and then you come up with some kind of a pesticide. Then the Pesticide Act will immediately become applicable to that particular laboratory. You cannot start using pesticide, you cannot start experimenting with pesticides unless until you have taken a proper license, or unless you've taken a proper authorization. So that's what is necessary when we are dealing, when we are dealing with laboratory and the kind of regulations that should be there in a laboratory. Now, the basic code of safety in a chemical laboratory. This is decided by the BIS Regulation 4209 :2013. First of all, of course, I'll just read it out here because this is a long regulation. So I have picked up a few points regarding how what kind of regulations should be adopted, the fundamental or the basic regulations that have to be adopted. More or less, these are common sense, but still they have been written in black and white. Rules of conduct: smoking is prohibited in working areas. Of course, there should be. Work in isolation has to be avoided. Why? Because if an accident occurs, there should be someone who should take care. Handling food or consuming drinks is prohibited. Of course, it should be, because you don't know what kind of things you start eating out there in a laboratory. Suitable fire extinguisher should be located nearby. Safety carriers should be used for transporting glass containers with a capacity of more than 2 liters. Glass can shatter, and when the glass shatters, it can spill. So you better be safe. All safety equipment should be clearly labeled and maintained. Safety information and emergency phone number should be displayed prominently. The BIS continues: laboratory design for safety. A bay design is preferable to a separate suite of rules. A bay design is preferable because in case there is a problem, in case there is an experiment, there will be people around who will be ready to help. The design is dependent upon the specific needs of the laboratory. In case of a student laboratory, it should be large with adequate space, because the students tend to be a bit careless. So we need people around. While a research laboratory should have separate rooms, there should be no fittings on the floor that may prevent free movement. Laboratory design for safety, anterooms. A laboratory should have anterooms besides the main room for conducting pressure reactions and other hazardous operations. Overnight reactions, reactions with large amount of solvents. These rooms should be made of fire retardant material and should be provided with exhaust fans. Separate room, preferably air conditioned, for instruments such as chromatograph and a spectrometer. So these are the essential kind of regulations or the essential kind of standards that have been provided by the BIS regulation for the purpose of determining what kind of safety regulations you need to follow. Then we have got these fume cupboards. I don't really know what it's used for, but just reading it, it gives me an idea that if toxic materials are being handled, it should be handled in some kind of sealed cupboard, which is probably known as the fume cupboards. Then there are service connections that should be there in every laboratory with color coding and with easily accessible valves for turning off in case of emergency. These are essential regulations. Stores, we have to have stores. Inflammable substances, solvent and gas cylinders has to be stored. They have to be stored according to the rules and regulations in force. Incompatible materials should be stored separately. Disposal, liquid and solid waste should be kept separate. Waste should be in a sealed container with a screw type cap and the container properly labeled. Waste should be separated into categories. Waste disposal practices for specific substances should be specifically followed. The BIS standard provides for waste disposal practices for specific substances such as liquid, acids, bases, etc. So again, the BIS comes with these guidelines. They are not really regulations. If you violate these, there could be problems, but it's not a criminal offense because these are simply the standards. You may lose your license, you may lose your laboratory, you may also come to some grief also, but at the end of the day, these are not the criminal specifications. These are not promulgated by an act of the parliament. Safety equipment. The following safety equipment should always be available: safety glasses, aprons, gloves. Safety equipment should require blankets, etc. PPEs such as masks, etc. There are guidance on other aspects in this BIS regulation. For example, the organization of laboratory safety should be such as measures to be taken in the case of spills, evacuation procedures and reporting systems, safety awareness, handling of apparatus, and working with chemicals. These are provided when this particular BIS regulation 2013. Guidance on other aspects, general laboratory techniques, guidance on special laboratory techniques such as solvent extraction, solvent stripping, pressure reactions, volume vacuum distillation. The BIS standard also provides guidance on the measures and the steps to be taken in case of accidents with specific reagents. Now we come on to the next part of this safety precautions, and this is the International Chemical Safety Cards. You would be knowing it, means the students of chemistry would be knowing it much better than me what these are. But as I discussed earlier, the safety regulations, आपके जो भी safety regulations are dependent upon the setting of that particular, the setting in which that particular reagent or the particular element is. तो आपकी जितनी भी safety है वो particular reagent, particular process और particular setting के साथ attached है. Now these international chemical safety cards ये आपको ये बताते हैं कि किस तरीके का harm वो particular मटेरियल प्रोड्यूस कर सकता और आपके रेगुलेशंस, आपके सेफ्टी प्रोसीजर्स उसके अराउंड डिटरमाइंड होंगे. वो एलिमेंट आपका कहीं भी हो सकता है, सारी चीजें उसके अराउंड डिटरमाइन हो जाएंगी. तो आपकी अगर सेटिंग चेंज हो गई है तो आप उस पर्टिकुलर एलिमेंट के या उस पर्टिकुलर मटेरियल के जो सेफ्टी प्रोसीजर्स है वह ऑटोमेटिकली आप अपने लेबोरेटरी मैनुअल में इनकॉर्पोरेट कर लोगे. इससे ज्यादा आप मींस आपको पहले से बताने की जरूरत नहीं है दैट यू शुड डू दैट, एक्सेप्ट कि आपका एक इंटरनेशनल एक रेगुलेशन होगा दैट यू शुड बी यूजिंग all the safety procedures that are required in accordance with the International Chemical Safety Cards. So this is the site, the ILO site, on which the ICSC cards are freely available. You can pick up this site and go for these cards. For those who are not from chemistry, means for chemistry students that they would be knowing all this stuff. Now, we have got the OECD principles of good laboratory practices. Again, these are not statutes, these are not regulations, these are merely guidelines, they are merely guidances that how you should carry out your laboratory practices. They are not enforceable, as we say in the court of law. They are dependent on the supervisor. They are dependent upon the situation on the ground. Now, if say a laboratory practice says that your exhaust fan should be on at all times, but the problem is that you don't have electricity in the laboratory, then you cannot really follow these GLPs. So you have to take a way out. You have to have proper ventilation, but you don't have an exhaust fan. So what do you do? Draught somehow. So this is the way the GLPs are practiced. They are not enforceable. They have to be modified with the situation, but they provide you a guidance, they provide you a standard around which your laboratory practices have to be modeled out. Your laboratory practices have to be organized. Now, there are other BIS standards. The list of, I have discussed only one, that's the 2013 standard relating to safety practices. Maybe I can view this. I don't know whether this would come onto your screen or not, but let me see. If it comes up, then I'll go and show you the list of BIS standards. There are a large number of BIS standards for different. Just a minute, I'll need to get back to my presentation screen. Can you see the BIS standard? Anyone? The BIS standards are not visible. Okay, just a minute.
No, sir.
Just a minute. Are they visible now?
Yes.
Hello, anyone? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are visible.
Hello?
And your slides are also visible. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can look at these select standards on safety and health. You have got these IS 3696.
Yes, sir. You are visible.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, if we can go along, these are large number of standards which are related to safety and health, and these standards are there for your laboratories, for your home, for your industries, for just about anything where these things are being used. Now, if you are using laser products, safety of optical fiber communication system, the standards that would be applicable to a laboratory would always be applicable to a home or to an industry wherever these laser products are being used. Similarly, industrial, of course, this is industrial, so it's not going to be used in a home setting. Similarly, we have got machinery and operations. We have got safety code for air conditioning revised. Again, when we are having these air conditioning machines, then we have to have some kind of a safety code, which again will be there, whether it's for home, whether it's for laboratory, whether it's for industry. Of course, since the scale is different, therefore the standards will go along. The standards will simply change in that sense, or the amount of the number of ducts or the number of tubes will change, but in the basic sense, the standards will remain the same. It doesn't matter whether it's in your home or in a very big industry, or let's say Tisco Tata and RN Steel Company. So what essentially I'm trying to point out to you is that we cannot have a fixed standard, we cannot have a fixed regulation for any industry, or for that matter, any laboratory. It all depends what you are using. The regulations or the safety practices move along with the material or the process. I'm coming back to my slides. Now, from here, I have been discussing this chemical laboratory. Now I'll move on to the radioisotope laboratory, wherever these radioisotopes are used. Radioisotopes would be used in a whole number of applications, not just in a chemical laboratory. In a chemical laboratory, it may be used in a medical laboratory. It may be used in material laboratory where you have got these metals. It may be used also in biotechnology laboratory. So again, it may be used exclusively in somewhere where only radiological services or only radio devices are being used, like let's say the BARC itself, the Baba Atomic Research Institute, Baba Atomic Research Center, not the institute, maybe for or an organization which is busy making atomic bombs. Now, the guidance for a laboratory dealing with radioisotopes is provided by AERB, Atomic Energy Research Board. I'll show you the guidance that has been provided by the AERB. However, what I need to point out here is that wherever the radioisotope will be used, it doesn't matter whether it's a chemical laboratory, it doesn't matter whether it's a physical laboratory, it doesn't matter whether it's a medical laboratory, it doesn't matter whether it's an agricultural laboratory. The guidance from the AERB and the UGC will immediately come into operation. So again, like say, in your laboratory, in the laboratory of your university, you come up with a radioisotope. So immediately the regulations regulating the use and handling of radioisotopes will immediately come into play, and you will have to apply for a license or an authorization to use those radioisotopes. Your normal or the regulations that you have been acting or operating with would not last. Now, this is assuming that you do not have radioisotopes. If you are having radioisotopes, the regulations are already there. I'll show you again the regulations that have been provided by the Atomic Energy Research Board. I'll just move again back. These are the guidelines. Guidelines for starting radioisotope laboratory. This is done by the AERB, Atomic Energy Research Board, and RSD, which is probably the Radiological Safety Division. That's one. That is from the AERB. The second comes from, this is the UGC regulation. Regulations and, sorry, this is a different. This is the UGC regulation, and it says UGC has prepared guidelines for universities and colleges for procurement, storage, usage, and disposal of radioactive and other hazardous materials and chemicals. Awareness of and adherence to these guidelines is of utmost importance, particularly that's a different thing. So this is how these guidelines and standards come into play. These standards or guidelines will come into play the moment you adopt a new process, or you take up a new substance in your existing laboratory. It won't matter what kind of laboratory you are running. The different ingredients, the different processes are regulated by different kinds of regulations which are prescribed by different agencies. There is no one agency which will prescribe the whole set of standards. Now, continuing on with this radioisotope laboratory, it provides for responsibilities of radiation security officer. This officer has to be appointed whenever you are dealing with radioisotopes, and this officer is the final and the officer who controls the procurement, storage, disposal, and supply for usage of radioactive isotope. Without his permission, you cannot even look at the radioactive isotope. Means in a figurative sense, you cannot even think about the radioactive isotope. Responsibilities of the supervisor. Supervisor is a lecturer, teacher, professor who would be planning each experiment and inform the RSO and ensure that safety precautions are followed. So the supervisor has to report to the RSO. So the moment you are going for a radioisotope, you will have to appoint a radiation security or safety officer. Without that, you cannot function. Then these two guidelines provides for the responsibility of the users. Next is your radioisotope laboratory, which is again decided by these guidelines, and they provide for the procurement and registration of sealed and unsealed radioisotopes, disposal of radioactive wastes, and emergency procedures. So these guidelines provide you how a radioisotope would be used in a laboratory. Now that laboratory could be exclusively for radiological purposes, or radioisotopes are being used in a different kind of a laboratory, which is for a different purpose. Now, laboratories handling nanomaterials. So we have taken a look at the chemical laboratory. We have taken a look at the radioisotope. Now, just I won't be going very much into detail out here, but since the idea of this presentation is to inform that you cannot have a fixed set of guidelines for each and every laboratory to be determined by an exclusive agency. So I'm taking you through a kind of a spotlight method where I'm providing you how, where I'm detailing how these guidelines come up. So whenever you are starting with a new process, you are starting with a new substance, you are starting with a new material, you have to go behind that and find out who is actually controlling the usage of that operation. In this case, the nanomaterial, the guidelines have been brought out by the DST, and it provides for the following, among others: identifying hazards, common path that could result in exposure control strategies, best practices, and safety practices. I'll again take you back to the DST guidelines. These are the DST guidelines and best practices for safe handling of nanomaterial in research laboratories and industries. As you can see, they are talking about the handling of nanomaterials in research laboratories as well as industries. So basically, it's not much different when you are talking about the safety procedures for handling, whether it be in laboratories or industry. These are the. I'll just take you to the content part. If you are interested in reading, and if you are interested in these nanomaterials, you can of course pick up this guideline and read it thoroughly. But for the timing, since this is not an exclusively nanomaterial portion, and we are not dealing with regulation strategies per se with the nanomaterial part, so I'm going to take a look at the contents and then move on. First of all, the exposure control strategies, which is engineering control, administrative controls, personal protective equipment, waste disposal, safety practices, transporting, body system, explosion control, explosion safety, access control, etc., dry powder. So essentially, these are the safety procedures for the nanomaterials. Moving back to my slides. Now we move on to the next part, the biotechnological sciences. They have prescribed the guidelines for the conduct of confined field trials for the regulated GE plants, genetical engineering plants. And then they also came out with the regulations and guidelines for the recombinant research and biocontainment 2017. So I'll ignore, means I have got this part out here, but I'll ignore this thing, means I won't be going back and forth. It's a bit tedious. But the fact is that different agencies come up with their guidelines in their area of operation. again emphasizing my point that a laboratory is not something which is exclusively devoted to one particular object alone. It can have a whole lot of things. It can have microorganisms, it can have explosives, it can have nanomaterials, it can have lasers, and then in those circumstances, the safety equipments or the safety devices that would be applicable to those particular things would immediately come into operation. Now, a part of it has been completed as far as the laboratory goes. I'll move on to the industries. This is a completely different setting, away from your home, away from your laboratory. Industries, we can say, are different from laboratories in one special aspect, and that is that they are not generic. An industry, a chemical industry, would be manufacturing one reagent or a couple of reagents. They won't be having that many reagents or that many materials as you would find in a typical laboratory. Second, since the volumes are huge, the chances of damage in case of accidents are also magnified several fold. So the setting is entirely different. Third, the workers that are working in that industry are not as well trained as the scientists working in a laboratory. So the setting becomes entirely different. The material may be the same, such as, let's say, sodium chloride. Now, a scientist handling sodium chloride and a person who is, let's say, a skilled technician handling sodium chloride is a completely different thing. So you have to have regulations looking into that setting. So due to this setting, safety in industries are regulated by acts and rules, and generally an inspector who is from a governmental organization looks whether safety rules are being followed or not. In case of laboratory, the inspectors don't generally come around. They are deferent to the professors who are running the laboratory. Now, there are some statutory provisions. Again, I won't be going into all these because as I will show you in my next slides, we cannot really decide which provisions will be applicable unless until we know what that particular industry is doing. So the statutory provisions, Factories Act, the Boilers Act, Petroleum Act, these are some provisions, not all of them. Quite a large number of provisions are there. As I just showed you in the BIS thing, in a similar fashion, we have got a huge number of acts and Explosive Act, Insecticide Act, Gas Cylinder Rules. I'll go along with the gas cylinder rules. I'll show you how these gas cylinder rules are effective and how these gas cylinder rules work from in the different settings. EPA 1986, Chemical Accidents Rules 1996, Biomedical 2016, AERB 2004, Atomic Energy Act 1962. Now, let's go into the petroleum industry. I'll simply pick up one industry. Okay, and आप जब पेट्रोल को देख रहे होते हो, अब उसमें कौन कौन से एक्ट लग सकते हैं, इससे ज्यादा भी लग सकते हैं, ये जरूर लगेंगे. एक्सप्लोसिव एक्ट 1884 क्योंकि पेट्रोलियम और पेट्रोलियम गैस से एक एक्सप्लोसिव है. अमोनियम नाइट्रेट रूल्स 2012 क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं अमोनियम नाइट्रेट इस पेट्रोलियम में यूज होता है. एक्सप्लोसिव रूल्स 2008. गैस सिलेंडर रूल्स क्योंकि गैस सिलेंडर में होती है. स्टैटिक एंड मोबाइल प्रेशर वेसल्स 2016. पेट्रोल
Hello, Dr. Veer. Dr. Veer, excuse me. Your microphone is muted. Kindly unmute yourself, Dr. Veer. Yeah.
I don't know how it got muted. I didn't mute it.
No issue. Now you are audible.
Now I get it, but I didn't mute it because I was only going for the screens. I didn't even touch it.
Perhaps somebody else microphone was not muted, and so in procedure to just mute them, you were also muted. It may be possible because
Okay, ma'am.
sound was there. Okay.
Am I audible, ma'am? Hello?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yes, you are
And the slide
audible.
is showing, this slide is visible?
Yeah. Everything is visible and okay. Continue.
Okay, so we were talking about the gas cylinder rules. Now, in case of petroleum industry, you need the gas cylinder rules because you are bottling the LP gas. But the gas cylinder rules would also be applicable in a hospital because you have got the oxygen tanks or the oxygen cylinders out there. You have got these gas cylinder rules applicable in industries wherever you are using any sort of a cylinder which is pressurized. So these rules are not specifically applicable to one industry or one laboratory. The gas cylinder rules will be applicable to your ordinary chemical laboratory because somewhere you would be using the LP gas. Your gas cylinder rules will be applicable to CSIL laboratory, which engineers showed just a while ago, because you are using the gas cylinders out there. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what kind of laboratory you are running. The regulations or the guidelines move along with the substance rather than with the laboratory. Now, I'll pick up one part of these rules. We have got these explosive rules 2008. I'll show you how it's applicable to different areas on different settings. Section 5 of the rules provides for safety distance in case of explosive. These are categorized as X, Y, Z, and ZZ. Explosives to be used have to be authorized explosives, that's section 6, while a license is necessary for any activity related to explosives, section 7, and subject to certain exceptions, which in section 9, which says that laboratories do not require license for use of explosives. Now, people employed to handle explosives should be properly qualified, section 11, and protections have to be provided, section 12, 18, 19, 20, and others. Now, let's see how the same act is applicable to different settings. In a laboratory which is having explosive with other reagents and experiments. Other acts and rules may be applicable, such as gas cylinder rules, since laboratories have gas cylinders. Explosive act will be applicable, gas cylinder rules will be applicable. However, suppose an industrial enterprise is involved in mining activities, they would need explosives. Now, in their case, Explosives Act would be applicable. Gas cylinders rules may not be applicable if that industry is not using such cylinders. So a laboratory may have to comply with a larger number of statutes and regulations compared to an industry. So this is how the setting changes the number of application of rules. What are you using in your laboratory will determine what kind of regulations will be applicable to you. We don't have a standard set of safety regulations for a standard laboratory. Now, before I come on to the final word, I told you about that that I'll discuss about the cylinder rules. Now, gas cylinder rules says that whoever is using a gas cylinder rule would follow these rules. You are using a gas cylinder in a home. One of the things that the gas cylinder rule says is that the gas cylinder would be held upright, and if it's held in a horizontal position, be clipped or chained in such a manner that it should not move around. I wonder how many of you knew this particular provision in gas cylinder rules. We keep the cylinders upright. Now, suppose someone does the opposite thing, he or she puts the cylinder in a horizontal fashion. There are people who do that. But can you go out after them and saying that, look, you have violated a certain rule? You can, of course, legally you can, but they basically never knew that the rules are also there. In a home setting, who cares? Unless until you know something, means you don't really go after it. However, in a laboratory, if a lab technician carelessly or intentionally puts the gas cylinder down in the horizontal position, there could be consequences for that. So the rules are the same, the object is the same, the consequences could be different. So how are the regulations, what kind of regulations are there and how are they applied? That too comes into play when the setting undergoes a change. Now I move on to my last slide. This is the final word. Regulation for any scientific, technological, industrial processes are dependent upon a host of factors, and they cannot be studied without a reference to those factors. Industries and laboratories work with an interface such as explosives may be used by a laboratory, but has to be provided by an industry. So whatever regulations are applicable to laboratories are more or less applicable on industries and vice versa. Guidance that are present for handling a substance are the same whether in industry or laboratory, except for the fact that in industry the material handled is in larger quantities and such material moves through public areas. Guidelines and regulations are modified to that extent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Veer. Yeah, it's a very pleasant lecture actually, and I think all the participants and the organizers also will be benefited by this wonderful talk of yours. Now, I would like to ask if participants has any query. If they have any query, kindly put in the chat box. आप chat box में लिख सकते हैं. अगर आपको कोई भी query है, कोई भी guidelines से related issue है, जो सर ने भी बताया, तो आप chat box में लिखिए. Otherwise, you can unmute yourself. अपने आप को unmute करिए और directly question आप पूछ सकते हैं. अगर किसी भी participants को कोई भी query है, तो अपनी query को आप chat box में लिखिए.
Hello.
Yeah, please.
Hello, am I audible?
Continue.
Okay, well, my question is that why contact lenses are not allowed in a chemical laboratory? Hello.
Look, hello. I was just unmuting my microphone. Look,
okay,
basically,
sir.
Yeah, why should contact lenses be not allowed? Means it's essentially a common sense regulation. Contact lens will serve two purposes. First of all, that contact lens, I means you are using it for those reading or visual purposes. That's what I understand with the contact lenses. Or the contact lenses that you paste in your eye, on eyeballs. Which contact lens you are referring to? Hello?
Yeah. Hello. Yes, sir. I'm listening.
Which contact lens is the spectacles or the one which you paste on your eyeballs? Anyway, look, the simple thing is that you have to be as easy and as movable as possible without something hindering your movement. Now, if you have got lenses which are hindering your movement or which can affect the way you are dealing with the reagents, then they have to be disallowed. So that's a very simple kind of logic. But I don't think contact lenses are disallowed everywhere. Maybe in certain circumstances they are disallowed, because I have been in certain laboratories, they haven't disallowed contact lenses. So it depends upon laboratory to laboratory and what kind of processes and what kind of equipments you are using. That essentially determines.
So mainly contact lenses are made by silicon. So I asked it.
So basically you are saying that lenses that are sticking onto your eyeballs, well, look, they cannot be removed in case of an emergency. That's very difficult to remove. So that's why they should be disallowed.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mahima, for our questioning. Is anybody else who wants to ask something? कोई और है जिसको कुछ पूछना है? Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Bikal Kumar Gupta ji, do you want to ask something? Okay, somebody has put in query in the chat box regarding feedback form. तो फीडबैक फॉर्म सर कल का भेजा जा चुका है थ्रू ईमेल आईडी. इफ आपकी ईमेल आईडी में कुछ प्रॉब्लम होगा तो हो सकता है आपको ना मिला हो. कल शाम को 7 बजे भेज दिया था. अभी हम इसी चैट बॉक्स में उसका लिंक पेस्ट कर देंगे और आज का भी आपको जो फीडबैक फॉर्म का लिंक है वो शाम को मिल जाएगा आफ्टर 7. तो अगर किसी को कोई और क्वेरी नहीं है तो मैं इस लेक्चर को सम अप करना चाहती हूँ। सर ने एक बहुत ब्रिलियंट लेक्चर दिया एंड इट इज अ नीड ऑफ एन आवर, बिकॉज हम लोग लेबोरेटरी में काम जरूर करते हैं बट हम लोग को ये नहीं पता होता है कि इसके पीछे भी कोई लॉजिक है और इस सेफ्टी मेजर्स को हमें लेना है, अदरवाइज जो लॉ इम्पोज्ड है हम पर उस पे हम लोगों को कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम्स आगे फेस करनी पड़ सकती है। तो इन नटशेल आई कैन समराइज द लेक्चर as sir explained what is meant by safety, and he also explained that safety regulations are contextualized in reference to the setting where safety procedures have to be applied. जहां जहां safety procedures चाहिए वहां लगाने ही पड़ेंगे, we can't move abide that. Next is he stated that it started with the example of a domestic kitchen which is in a sense a mini or a basic laboratory. तो किचन के एग्जाम्पल से उन्होंने हमें समझाते हुए बहुत कुछ डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करते हुए ये बताया कि a kitchen can be on a commercial scale also and hence would require safety measures. He used the example of a domestic kitchen for the purpose of explaining the variety of safety regulation and the absence of generalized regulations in laboratories and industry. तो किचन में भी एक्सपेरिमेंट्स करते हैं हम लोग और वो एक्सपेरिमेंट्स बहुत हार्मफुल हो सकते हैं अगर हम रेगुलेशंस को फॉलो अप नहीं करेंगे, स्पेशली वो किचन्स जो हम कमर्शियल लेवल पर यूज कर रहे हैं। सो जो सेट ऑफ सेटिंग्स है वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि हम किस केमिकल को कहाँ यूज कर रहे हैं और वो केमिकल कौन पर्सन यूज कर रहा है। अगर वो लॉमैन यूज कर रहा है, लेमैन यूज कर रहा है तो वो उसका कुछ भी कर सकता है, ठीक है। तो यहाँ पर आपकी जो रोल आ जाता है वो जो आपको गाइड कर रहा है, जो मेंटर कर रहा है उसका, कि वो आपको उस केमिकल को लेकर और उस मशीन को लेकर सारी इंफॉर्मेशन पहले से ही प्रोवाइड कराए या आपको उसकी इंफॉर्मेशन पहले से ही यूज करने से पहले ही जान लेनी चाहिए। इन नेक्स्ट ही एक्सप्लेन द वेरियस फीचर्स ऑफ द BIS कोड 4209 and 2013 which relates to code of safety in chemical laboratories. So BIS law codes के बारे में सर ने हमें इंफॉर्मेशन दी। The participants were taken through the list of other BIS code also. He explained that different types of laboratories require different safety measures. तो ये तो पहले से ही क्लियर है कि हर लैब में एक लेबोरेटरी का जो रूल है वो नहीं चल सकता है। Different types of laboratory requires different safety measures, and these measures are provided by different agencies also. And these agencies are nothing but DBT, DST, AERB, CSIR, etc. Further, he explained how the same substance in a different setting would require a completely different set of safety regulations depending upon its interaction with other substance. NaCl का एग्जाम्पल देते हुए सर ने समझाया कि अगर वो किचन में यूज होता है तो उसके लिए कोई खास प्रिकॉटिव मेजर्स नहीं यूज करने हैं, लेकिन अगर उसको हम केमिकल लेबोरेटरी में ले जाएंगे तो वो वहां पे सॉल्ट नहीं है, वो आपका केमिकल है और इट कैन क्रिएट मेनी हैजार्डस केमिकल्स व्हेन इट रिएक्ट्स विद सर्टेन अदर केमिकल्स. So there is again a regulations to use it. He elaborated upon the safety precautions used in industry and how those regulations differ with the type of industry. Next, he explained the central idea of the presentation was that safety regulations cannot be predetermined. They change with the setting of the activity and are dependent upon a host of factors, and hence the regulations provided in a setting are dynamic, and that is, it is necessary for a person who is managing a laboratory to upload or update the various regulations that may have an impact on the carrying on laboratories activity. तो इतना सब सर ने हमें एक्सप्लेन किया एंड बहुत ही प्रिसाइजली उन्होंने बताया, और साथ में ये भी बताया कि दो वी हैव लॉट्स ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, we need lots of safety concern and regulations, but according to the need of an hour हमें बहुत ज्यादा लंबा टॉक नहीं था, तो इसलिए सर ने उसको बहुत प्रिसाइज करके बहुत अच्छे से एक्सप्लेन किया. And I really appreciate the way sir interacted with the participants and he explained each and everything, whatever required, wherever required, in a perfect manner. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for coming here and enrich ourselves, our participants, with your knowledge. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now I would like to call Dr. Poonam Shukla Tripathi to take over the mic and continue with the next day plan. Yeah.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Continue, please.
Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. जैसा कि आप यस आप सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स ने आज जो भी 2 लेक्चर्स आपने सुने, डॉक्टर निशा सक्सेना ने उसको बहुत ही अच्छे तरीके से समराइज भी कर दिया आपके सामने। और मैं आपको अब एक ओपन फोरम फॉर इंटरेक्शन देना चाहती हूँ कि अगर आप किसी को कोई भी बात कहनी है, किसी भी तरीके का कोई सुझाव देना हो या फिर कोई क्वेश्चन पूछना हो, तो आप प्लीज 2 मिनट के अंदर अपने आप को ऑडियो अनम्यूट करके आप बोल सकते हैं। मैं 2 मिनट वेट कर रही हूँ। Anyone is interesting to say something? I think there is no one. So I am going to proceed my today's work and tell you about tomorrow's lecture. आप 23rd को लेक्चर होगा द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी इन साइंटिफिक रिसर्च एंड इट्स रेगुलेशन, और ये लेक्चर प्रेजेंट करेंगी। शी इज ऑल्सो फ्रॉम Sikkim Central University. She is an assistant professor in chemistry department of law there. And मैं उम्मीद करती हूँ कि आपको अभी जो लेक्चर आपने सुना, रूल एंड रेगुलेशन, सेफ्टी रेगुलेशंस क्या है, बहुत अच्छे तरीके से सर ने प्रेजेंट किया। और आप ये जो इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी है, इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी राइट्स, ये टॉपिक आपको बहुत ज्यादा बेनिफिट देगा और आपको इसे ध्यान से सुनना चाहिए कल का लेक्चर। सेकेंड टॉपिक होगा NMR स्पेक्ट्रोस्कोपी इन मॉलिक्यूलर स्ट्रक्चर एल्यूसिडेशन। इसको प्रेजेंट करेंगे एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर फ्रॉम डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ केमिस्ट्री, बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी, डॉक्टर राम सागर मिश्रा। सेकेंड लेक्चर डॉक्टर राम सागर मिश्रा के द्वारा होगा, जो मॉलिक्यूलर स्ट्रक्चर एल्यूसिडेशन में NMR स्पेक्ट्रोस्कोपी क्या रोल प्ले करता है, क्या उसके साथ हमें गुड लेबोरेटरी प्रैक्टिस में क्या हमें सेफ्टी प्रिकॉशंस लेने होंगे इन द केस ऑफ प्रिपेयरिंग samples, NMR samples of any organic compound. So I hope that you all participants and guests were enjoyed today's and yesterday's lecture, and I hope that you will also be present in the tomorrow's lecture. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming, presenting here and listening these talks. Thank you very much. Can I wind up this lecture today? Nisha Saxena, Dr. Nisha Saxena.
Yeah, Dr. Poonam, we can wind up right now. So thank you, participants, for joining us, and thank you, guests and invited speakers. Now we would like to take your leave. Thank you, everyone. And tomorrow at 11.
11 o'clock.
Tomorrow we will be here at 11 o'clock in the morning sharp. And further, I have already given the link for feedback and quiz form 1 in the chat box. So you can click on that until we are here and continue later on, no issue. If you will not receive the feedback from quiz 2 link today in your email, don't worry, I will put it on the chat box tomorrow. So continue, please. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Poonam, we can.
Okay.
And, thank you, Dr. Veer. Okay.
Okay, going to end up this meeting.
Shekhar sir is here. Poonam, Dr. Poonam.
Shekhar? No, I think he has left.
Okay, no issue. And Achari sir, I think he is here. No.
Achari sir is not.
Yeah. Achari sir is here, I think.
Okay. Sir, you want to say something?
Yeah. I was there.
Welcome.
From start to beginning to end. And
yes, sir.
I was listening.
And Dr. Twinkle, I can see she is also here.
बहुत interesting रहा. And it is very good knowledge regarding safety measures taken in different forms, different laboratories, and industrial condition. Thank you very much for such an organization of, and hope in the coming days we'll have some more knowledgeable lecture delivered. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now
I want
Dr. Poonam, you can
I
close
want
the
to
meeting.
invite one of my colleague, Dr. Twinkle Kesri, that he unmute herself and say something about this 5-day national workshop. Please welcome.
Hello.
Yes, you are
Myself audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah, Dr.
ma'am.
Twinkle, you are audible.
बहुत I just appreciate to Dr. Poonam Shukla and Dr. Nisha Saxena for their efforts which they have made for this workshop. I have listened yesterday also, today also. It is going on very good. I wish that it further go like this only. We end up with more knowledge for students also and for us also. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kesri. Thank you so much. Okay, Dr.
Okay.
Poonam.
Okay.
And okay, Acharya sir.
Okay, bye bye. फिर मिलेंगे कल. Bye.
कल फिर मिलेंगे. Wind up. Thank you. Good day.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
हमने अपनी जगह